how's it going, guys? Welcome back to the African Comic Guy. Super excited to be back with you guys. It's been a couple of weeks. We had Thanksgiving, and I hope you guys had an incredible Thanksgiving. I did as well. Ate a lot, had some friends and family over, so it was really fun. It was really fun, and I hope you guys are enjoying your holiday season. The holiday season is my favorite time of the year. I mean, I start playing Christmas carols the beginning of November. That's how obsessed I am about the holiday season. But we're here because obviously you saw the title. We're about to talk about the Arrowverse, what happened to the Arrowverse, and why Superman and Lois basically, it almost like it picked up from where Arrowverse was, because the Arrowverse, when I'm talking about the Arrowverse, those of you who are familiar with the Arrowverse, it started off with the Arrow, with the Flash. Those two shows actually really, really catapulted a lot of DC content on cable TV, right? And they were outstanding initially, and then it just fell off, And then obviously Superman and Lois came after all of this happened, and it just took off. So we're about to talk about why the two are drastically different, and what exactly happened to really make the Arrowverse fail, and at the same time allow Superman and Lois to really flourish. So we're about to talk about that. But before that, for those of you who don't know the Arrowverse, how about a clip? Just introduce you to the characters, the superheroes that encompass the Arrowverse. Check this out.
Yeah, this will do. You guys ready? I was born ready, Hoss. Okay, let's suit up. Let's hit it. Hold up, hockey man. Vibes is getting ready to get ready.
Sorry, I'm late. Getting back to work is hard work.
They say the suit makes the man, but in my case, the man also made the suit.
I try to keep it simple. Unlike Harry Allen over here, who still needs a shave.
Wait, when you said suit up, you meant like right now? I'm hungry.
Yes, now. We've been suiting up for 20 minutes. I mean, am I the only one who suits up one leg at a time?
Well, yeah, it's a skirt, so I don't have to deal with legs and zippers and stuff like that.
Okay.
Everybody's got time for a suit-up, but nobody's got time to wait for the new guy to charge up.
Now that was obviously a little snippet, right? Introduction to the Arrowverse. And as you saw in the Arrowverse, there are different characters, different superheroes that really encompass the Arrowverse. Starting off with the Arrow, the Green Arrow, Oliver Queen, and then the Flash, Barry Allen, and then played by Supergirl, Carol Danvers. And then moving forward with Batwoman, right? And then obviously the Legends of Tomorrow, who are actual characters that came from all these shows, right? Came from the Arrow, came from the Flash. And then you also have Black Lightning. You have a Black Lightning. And a lot of these shows really, they were initially good shows. Starting off with the Arrow and the Flash. Now, if you don't know, this almost 12 years ago, almost 12 to 13 years ago, the Arrow came on cable television. And if there's one thing you know about DC and DC content is very dark. DC content is very gritty, very intense. Now, we didn't know if that was what we were going to have, but I remember watching the pilot episode of The Arrow, and I just went crazy because I loved how dark it was, not only visually, but at the same time, how brutal the Arrow was, because we've seen shows before. We've seen Warner Brothers try to put on superhero shows on TV, and unfortunately, they did not land well because they were too soft. They didn't really have that it factor that DC really brings to their content. But I remember watching The Arrow, and initially I was hooked because this dude was brutal. It's like watching Batman initially when you're still trying to figure out his power. He wasn't really holding back. He was really hurting heroes. And again, he had to grow through that. But it was really awesome to see that because we saw this character grounded. It wasn't, we saw him go from actually become the Arrow, but at the same time go through trauma, go through heartache, go through loss, right? Personally, if he lost his dad, and that really, it really made him realize not only how grateful you should be about life, but also protecting it. And he made an oath to protect the citizens of his city. And one of the cool things he always says is, "You filled this city." That's one of his top lines. You know what I mean? You filled this city. And that show was outstanding. When I tell you it was well written for the first 5 seasons, it was outstanding. And then that followed closely by The Flash. And I remember The Flash cameoing. He cameoed in an episode of The Arrow. And then here comes The Flash. And that also becomes a hit show. Both of them were a hit from the beginning because they had incredible writing, outstanding writing. They hit the home run with casting because both of them were outstanding casts. And then not only that, even the supporting cast as well were really, really good. So these two shows initially were so well written that they spoiled us, because we kept consuming this content and we couldn't get enough of it. So the ratings kept going up, and we couldn't believe this is what we were getting on cable television. You know what I mean? It's like you expected this quality of show on like HBO. That's how good it was. It wasn't like watching like a really cartoonish type show where you're like, yeah, these shows were grounded in how dark DC is, but at the same time, they give us really good context. They give us really good information and dialogue and relationships and all these things that we naturally go through in our personal lives. We saw it through these guys. We saw their lives outside of superheroes. We saw them battle with this decision to be a superhero, to also at the same time also be human, be married, have relationships, have all these things, all these conflicts, all these things that we typically go through. We got to see that on a cable TV show, and they hit it well. So initially, the Arrowverse was off to an incredible start. But obviously, if we're talking about it, it came crashing down. Now, we've talked about The Flash, we've talked about The Arrow, but one thing that those two shows also did was they also, because of their success, studio is always looking to, you're always looking to cash in on success. You always want to kind of strike while the iron is hot. You always want to keep if we're in this momentum, and they had momentum because they had two shows, The Arrow and The Flash. They were really, really good. They had incredible ratings, but at the same time, the viewership, people were watching. I mean, you took a look at in terms of how they were they were critically acclaimed. These were shows that had really incredible ratings. So obviously the studio realized, hey, you know what? Let's introduce other superhero characters in this Arrowverse. Because in the beginning, we didn't really know there would be an Arrowverse. We didn't know. But shortly after that, they introduced Supergirl. And I remember watching the pilot episode of Supergirl, and that's when that's when I knew. Okay, because again, I'm a huge fan of Superman. I'm also a huge fan of Supergirl, done the right way. But I remember watching that show, and it was just, sometimes you just get a feeling. And for me, it was just a feeling of, yeah, no, and I kept watching it. But the more I kept watching the show, the more I just felt disillusioned, the more I felt detached from this show. I didn't really understand what they were trying to do with this show. And I really started seeing, oh man, their writing started falling off because the way they wrote Supergirl, if you know Supergirl, if you know the character Supergirl, you could tell they were really trying to add. That's when I started realizing these writers are really starting to add their own agenda, right? Their own beliefs and whatever is into these shows. They're adding themselves into these shows instead of really keeping these shows kind of like comic focused. You know what I mean? Because you always have source material. Your source materials are comic books. But unfortunately, if they were going so far outside of comics, not only the dialogue, visually, how Supergirl was, the character itself, herself, it was so bad. And I remember, again, spinning off. These are all spin offs because of the Arrow and the Flash. And then came the Legends of Tomorrow. And the Legends of Tomorrow actually brought in not only other characters, but a lot of these characters came from, again, all these three shows. You had characters from all these three shows, from the Arrow, from the Flash, from Supergirl, that really developed, and now they formed the Legends of Tomorrow. So and I remember watching those two shows, Supergirl and Legends of Tomorrow, and you could really tell the writing was just disappearing. These came 4 or 5 years after the Arrow and the Flash. So after these two shows were really established, you have a fan base that's really excited and crazy about these two shows. And obviously now we're more excited about seeing more content, more superheroes. Because again, it was fun to see. Marvel wasn't doing this. DC was. So it's really exciting to see, but unfortunately they fell off. And I've always said, good writing, good acting, and good casting, good directing, you can do extremely well. Sometimes it might not be perfect, but you always do it well. And unfortunately, the writing just really dropped. And then we started seeing that come into the Arrow and the Flash. Because now, after like season 5 of both shows, we just started seeing this dramatic drop in quality of writing. The stories didn't align. The villains just looked crazy. The CGI, we were like, what the hell happened? Because it was so drastic, it didn't really make sense. You know what I mean? It was almost like it's like closing a tap. It didn't really make sense how bad everything just got. But unfortunately, that's just how bad it got. And soon enough, they were starting to team up to really create the Arrowverse. And, and that is basically the nightmare that we're about to talk about. So came teaming up, the Arrowverse, where if you know comics, you obviously know about the Crisis. Yeah, if you know DC, you know Crisis. There's, Crisis on Infinite Earths, Crisis on 2 different Earths. But the Crisis is basically this huge event in DC history that the whole universe is basically being destroyed, being wiped away. And DC superheroes from from the multiverse, different versions of Superman and Batman and Wonder Woman, all come together to really, really, really try and stop or put a stop to this. Because unfortunately, a lot of universes disappear, but they do end up saving the multiverse. So this is a story they're trying to tell when they're trying to show these guys teaming up with all these all these characters teaming up to really prevent this from happening. And it all sounds good, but when it's not well written, you know what I mean? When it's not well written, when you can see these players don't even play well against each other. Like the Flash and the Arrow, those two gelled. Like when you saw those two come together, when those two actually partnered up in each other's shows or whatever, they clicked. There was so much chemistry, even with their different teams, right? There was so much chemistry there. But when these other characters came on, Supergirl, Batwoman, the Legends of Tomorrow, when all these guys came on board and all connected, there was a serious disconnect. When they all came together, you could tell they didn't really work well together. Not only visually, the dialogue didn't work, the storyline didn't work. And what ended up happening was you had a bad story, and nobody really wanted to watch it. And if you watch the end of the crisis, when they basically, this is the fight at the end, it was so bad, and I think it was the lowest rated and viewed episode from the Arrowverse because it was that bad. So coming from how good this Arrowverse started to where they went, it was, I remember feeling so bad, and this obviously comes at a time when we've had so much bad content recently from DC in movies. But this started off in the show, and I don't know if this was something that, I don't know if there's a correlation between the two. I have no idea. But coming from where they came from, with so much expectation and so much excitement and so much hype, to get what we got was crazy. But, even with, and I feel like I'm bashing the Arrowverse, there were silver lining, and there was a silver lining. We got the first 5 seasons of The Arrow and The Flash were outstanding. If you watch those shows, I bet you get hooked, and I would highly recommend them. I'm just giving you a heads up that moving forward from like the 5th season of both shows, you'll definitely see a drop in quality, especially with writing and storytelling. The silver lining was, well, there were two. One was Black Lightning. Black Lightning was an outstanding show. This show is one of my favorite shows. It had 4 seasons. It definitely left us feeling like we needed more seasons because this show was so well written. So well written, but it was caught up with this muck. It was caught up with all this craziness that was going on with the Arrowverse. And unfortunately, as a result of the Arrowverse disappearing, because they shut it off, they basically killed it off. This show got killed off where we knew there was so much more to be told in this story because they were so good. The family was outstanding. The character himself, it was awesome. And I would highly recommend Black Lightning. If you haven't watched Black Lightning, you can find it on HBO Max. I think you can also find it on Netflix. Watch that show, and I tell you, you will fall in love with Black Lightning. Now, the other silver lining was the fact that amongst the Arrowverse, while all these characters were teaming up, we got an introduction to Superman, Tyler Hoechlin, who played Superman in the Arrowverse. Now, if you watch the Arrowverse, you will not like him because he doesn't look like Superman, even physically. He didn't really embody Superman physically. But there was something about him. There was really something about him. We didn't know that there were things working in the background, that they were actually working on a standalone show with Superman. But he was not good. He really wasn't that good. The character himself wasn't really that good in the Arrowverse. But he still captivated you. There was just this one thing about him alone, his acting, his presence. You know what I mean? You could see Superman in him. You could actually, the first thing you saw in him was Clark. You definitely saw Clark in him. But Lois Lane in the Arrowverse as well. Those two had instant chemistry, and you could see it. Even though it was brief, even though they basically cameoed in a lot of these shows, you could tell there was chemistry between these two, and which tells you that was incredible casting. So the reason I call it silver lining was after the Arrowverse basically imploded, we got Superman and Lois. And again, coming from all of that, we were all dejected, disillusioned. We were all so disappointed with the Arrowverse. Obviously, you don't really have so much hope or even excitement, or even you don't really have a lot of interest in anything coming out of DC. But then you watch the pilot episode of Superman and Lois. And one thing you realize really, really fast is visually it's captivating. It's dark. You can see DC just visually. The picture itself shows you DC. And then the story. You start falling in love with this story because now you see a Superman that is well and grounded. It's something that we've wanted to see, and it's really hard to tell that kind of story in the movies because that movie would be 10 hours long. But they got this right. We get to see in Superman and Lois, we get to see a Superman, and we get to see a Clark. We get to see them Both of them with Lois and Clark. We get to see them as parents. We get to see them working. We get to see them as husband and wife. So we get to see this relationship develop. We get to see their kids. We get to see all the drama and trauma and pain and everything. You get to really see Superman in a different light, in a different way than you've ever seen Superman. You actually get to see the human part of Superman. You get to see this distinction. While he's off being Superman and saving the world and doing whatever he's doing, and he's dealing with everything he's doing, but you actually now get to see a family. You get to see a family dynamic that we've never seen in Superman. And when I tell you this show is so well written that it became outside of the Arrow, because the Arrow just first season was just outstanding. Superman and Lois became one of the most favorite shows on TV. Came right after Yellowstone. That's how popular it became. And it's not because of it. So everybody knows Superman. It's good writing. So what I'm pretty sure is they decided, these directors and writers decided to really focus on source material, on the content. Really listen to fans, because fans will always let you know when you are messing up. And with this show, with Superman and Lois, I mean, this show is an outstanding show. I would highly recommend it for family. It is so much fun. You'll enjoy watching it. You will binge watch it. You can find it on HBO Max. I don't know if you can find it on Netflix, but I promise you, if you watch Superman and Lois, you will love it. And you know what? How about we just watch a trailer? Because I really want some of you to really fall in love with this show, like I have. Check out this trailer.
All these stories about growing up here.
Tell you it sucks.
Actually, I think he kind of loved it.
We came here as a family.
It's too dangerous for them to know.
It's more dangerous if they don't.
You're Superman? No, we've seen Superman before. We've seen him.
You told the boys you're Superman. Couldn't lie to them anymore.
This is gonna keep my family together.
Clark, it's gonna tear it apart.
All the times you were gone, you lied to me. You both did.
I can't just abandon the world.
The world will always need Superman. Right now, this family needs you more.
Superman and Lois, 2-hour premiere event, Tuesday, February 23rd. Stream free next day, only on the CW.
Here we are with the Arrowverse. Started off so well, but unfortunately, the end was just outrageous and an atrocity. It's just the easiest way to say it. But I'm hopeful, because if Superman and Lois is an indication of what DC content can be in the future, then I'm hopeful. And I will remain hopeful. I will remain optimistic that the future shows we get will actually captivate us again, allow us to really fall in love with these shows again. Because trust me, as fans, we want to. I can be as harsh as I am to the Arrowverse right now, but trust me, if they actually do a reboot and they're good, I'll be the first one watching it, and I'll be the first one to basically sound their praises. So again, I am optimistic and hopeful, because obviously with James Gunn as a new head of DC, maybe, just maybe, we're going to have incredible content in the future. So I will remain hopeful. Anyway, like always, thank you for joining me in another episode of the African Comic Guy. I hope you've learned a lot. I hope you've enjoyed this conversation. And I can't wait to see you on the next African Comic Guy. See you later, guys. Peace.